Hello and welcome back to London Cycle Routes. Today I'll be showing you how to cycle from Waterloo, south of the river, to Greenwich in southeast London. This ride takes about 30 minutes and you can do the whole thing on quiet streets and protected cycle lanes. By public transport, the same journey also takes about half an hour and generally requires a change of lines, so cycling is just as fast and could be more convenient. If you find this video useful, or you just enjoy watching it, then please don't forget to hit the bell icon and subscribe to the channel, as I try to post new videos just like it every week. I'd also like to say a big thank you to everybody who supports the channel on Patreon. If you'd like to contribute as well, you can find the link in the description below the video. Alright, let's get going. So we're starting outside the Waterloo Road entrance to Waterloo Station, and we immediately want to turn around and head down Sandell Street. Sandell Street is nice and quiet because the railway bridge coming up on our left is closed to motor traffic, so there isn't really a through route through this area. Immediately turn left and head down Wootton Street, which is much the same deal thanks to two further closures, one on the left here coming up and another at the end of the street. As a result, this whole residential area, much of which is council housing, is nice and quiet and doesn't suffer from through traffic, despite being very much in the centre of town. Those railway bridge closures are long standing and have been there for years, but this one that we're just about to go through at the end of Greenwich Street was actually put in by Lambeth Council during the pandemic, and together with the existing closures created a mini low traffic neighbourhood east of Waterloo Station. You might have noticed lots of people sitting out having breakfast and coffee on this street, The Cut, and that's because there was also a filter installed there and lots of urban realm and planting put in, which has made the street a lot more pleasant than it used to be. It also makes it essentially a traffic-free cycle route, so really useful for us too. We've just passed Blackfriars Road, which has a big protected cycle lane on it, but we won't be using it today. Instead, we're going straight down Union Street, and then when you come to the first signal junction, turn right down Great Suffolk Street. Southwark Council recently put in some one-way restrictions around here to manage traffic. That's what those planters are for. It's removed a lot of the through traffic, although it hasn't quite dropped to the same levels as you might expect in a full low traffic neighbourhood featuring proper traffic filters. It's very quiet this morning, but it is usual to see a few cars down here, although they shouldn't pose too much of a problem. What you want to do now is keep following Great Suffolk Street until you get to the beginning of a Transport for London signposted route called Cycleway 10, previously known as Quiet Way 1. We'll be following C10 for a while, but we're not going to take it all the way to Greenwich, and that's because a new cycle lane called Cycleway 4 has just opened up on the main road, Evelyn Street, leading into Greenwich, and there's a great link between C10 and C4, which I'll show you. It saves a lot of time, it's more direct, and it's also a more pleasant ride, so I'm really looking forward to getting to that later in the video. For now, all we need to do to follow C10 is keep an eye out for the signs. So you can see on the road here it's written C10 with a little cycle symbol, and you'll also occasionally run into signposts which are blue and lime green. The whole route is very quiet and well put together, and reasonably direct for a backstreet route. The wayfinding is also pretty good, although there are a few things to watch out for. One of them is here. You might miss the arrow pointing around the corner for C10. You want to turn left after that chicane and head down Globe Street. That's easy to miss, but now that you've seen the video, you'll be fine. Regular viewers of the channel may notice that this video looks a lot better than previous videos. In fact, I think it would be fair to say that this is the best looking London Cycle Routes video ever. For that, you have to thank everybody who contributes to support the channel on Patreon, as they have made it possible for me to buy a new camera. A couple of weeks ago I already announced that I will be moving the channel to 4K video footage. What I didn't realise was that my existing camera couldn't shoot 4K in the way that the channel needed at 60 frames per second with image stabilisation on. So I decided to upgrade the camera, something I never would have been able to do without the generous people on the Patreon helping out with the costs. So thank you so much to everybody on there. If you like the channel and you're thinking of chucking us a few quid a month to help out as well, there's a link in the description below the video. Coming up here on the right, make sure you don't miss this turning into the path. That arrow is not pointing down the road, but it's pointing instead into this little track. This closure at the end of the street keeps it nice and quiet. One thing to look out for on the left here is a nice archway leading into the Meakin estate. That was inspired by a famous social housing development in Vienna called Karl-Marx-Hof. Now, coming up here, unfortunately they were doing some work on the tree, so the cycle crossing was closed. Normally you'd have a signalised crossing over that road. Fortunately, it wasn't too busy and we were able to just nip across. I did come back there a couple of hours later and they'd already finished, which is great to see. So you're not going to run into that issue when you go there. I really like this section of C10 as it cuts through a really interesting tapestry of old social housing. Just coming up ahead, we do have a bit of an issue as two cars try and pass each other. However, that isn't typical at all. There isn't any through route in this area, so we were just unlucky to run into two cars trying to access the estate at the same time, which isn't typical. This next section on Willow Walk is fairly average. It runs next to an industrial estate with various businesses in it, including some light industry and distribution depots. As a result, during office hours especially, you are occasionally likely to run into the odd van, which can be a bit annoying. However, generally when I've been down here, traffic is low enough not to spoil it as a route, especially when the rest of C10 is so good. At the end of the street, we'll get some traffic lights, and just note that on the left, there is a cycle-only traffic light at cycle level, which gives us a head start over the other cars. On the left there, by the way, is a cafe called Kroll & Co, which I have to confess I've never checked out, but several people have recommended to me in the comments, so I will one day stop, I promise. Don't miss this turning right here, by the way, onto Chaucer Drive. The rest of the route now is on completely filtered streets or separated paths. I've always found this section of town quite interesting. In many ways it's quite suburban, it's got pitched roof houses, semi-detached, laid out in cul-de-sacs, but filters like this one we're just passing through here connect up the different cul-de-sacs and make it possible to cycle through them. As a result, it takes a lot longer to drive anywhere by car than it does to cycle anywhere because we essentially get a shortcut, and therefore we see a lot more people on bikes than we do actually driving around, despite the suburban character of the neighbourhood. If you live in a suburb or a small town, it might be interesting to think how this could be applied to where you live and whether you think it would work. Another odd thing about this area, which is South Bermondsey, is that despite looking very suburban, it's actually pretty centrally located. Believe it or not, we're actually north of Vauxhall here, which most people will consider to be nearly central London. Despite the suburban stylings of the homes and the low densities of some, like the one on the right there, if you look closely at some of the other buildings, like the one on the right here, they're actually 4 stories tall, which is actually pretty dense. And the ones dead ahead of us are clearly flats as well and 3 stories tall. So the densities around here are probably a little bit higher than you might otherwise expect. There's more 4 stories on the left here, and again, dead ahead of us as well. That said, I'm personally not a fan of the style of architecture that you find around here. I think it's pretty boring and they could have done something a bit more interesting with the character of the buildings. That said, I'm sure that some people who live around here like it, and I'm not opposed to a mix of different styles in London, which is what I think makes the city so interesting. After crossing this excellent cycle bridge over Rotherhithe New Road, we find ourselves on a shared path. So this path you're allowed to cycle on and it's nice and wide, but it is shared with pedestrians. So when you're on a bike, it's your job to look out for people around you, not ride too quickly, and to give people plenty of space. Now, this path has actually featured in local news reports recently. There are apparently reports of people being mugged on it, particularly riding back late at night by themselves. Now, I've not personally experienced this, and it is difficult to tell whether or not reports like that are isolated incidents being blown out of proportion, or whether or not there is genuinely a problem with the path. I don't know, and it's certainly not something that I have direct experience with, so I'd be really interested to know in the comments below whether or not anybody has any more personal information about what is going on here and whether or not anybody rides this regularly. My understanding is that the path is actually pretty busy at commuter times, so it's difficult to see it being an issue around then, but perhaps there's an issue later in the evenings that I'm not aware of. Also, I should mention about that path that when Millwall Football Club are playing football at home, that it is closed because it is used to access the stadium. It's usually just for a couple of hours before the match and an hour after the match. Indeed, this video was filmed on a Saturday when Millwall were playing at home, and I was able to ride down there fine, so it's not like it's closed all day, and it's not, of course, every week or even all year. Hopefully those two issues should be solved early in the new year when another section of Cycleway 4 opens on the main road, and that should allow us to completely bypass that section of the route, and I will do a video showing you how to do that when that happens. I believe that's currently under construction as of November 2022, and hopefully it will open in the first half of 2023. On this street, by the way, make sure you're careful as you cross the mouths of the various driveways and businesses that are positioned along the road. Cycleway 10 continues through Folkestone Gardens, which is this rather nice small park that we're going through now. Take the right hand fork and don't ride too quickly because the path is shared with pedestrians. By the way, the wayfinding in this park had faded quite badly, and it's good to see that the letters C10 have been prominently repainted, so it is quite easy to tell which way to go, although it would have been good of them to redo the arrows at the same time, because those have also basically disappeared. As we cross under the Southeastern Mainline Railway, this is actually where we're going to leave C10. If you were continuing on C10, you would turn right here, but we don't do that. We go straight on down Gosterwood Street, which is a very attractive Victorian residential street, which has no through traffic on it because it's closed at the far end. This is, in my view, the best link between Cycleway 10 and the new section of Cycleway 4 on Evelyn Street, which we're about to go on now. By the way, a few people have asked me what those semicircular metal hangers, like the one on the left here, are. They're actually cycle hangers, and they're for residential cycle parking. If you need somewhere to keep your bike, it's worth checking with your local council whether they can put one on your street, or whether there are any slots free in an existing one. Right, now we used the Toucan crossing to get from Gosterwood Street onto Evelyn Street, and that took us across the road onto this cycle track. This is Cycleway 4, and when it's finished it's going to stretch all the way from Woolwich in East London to London Bridge in Central London. However, only certain bits of it have been done so far, and this is the latest section. It covers Evelyn Street and leads onto Creek Road, which will bring you right into Greenwich town centre. Hopefully early next year another section will open, and that will make it possible to go all the way from London Bridge to Greenwich on just protected cycle lane of this extremely high quality. That will be the big one, and that will really open up significant numbers of new routes around South East London, which I'll be happy to show you on the channel. If that sounds interesting, make sure you smash the subscribe button so you're alerted for new videos. I really think that TfL has done a great job with the design of this, and there are some really interesting design elements. One thing worth noting is how side roads are dealt with. The blue paint in front of each side road is there to show motorists pulling in and out of the side roads that they need to watch out for cyclists. That's actually a safety feature that's been borrowed from Copenhagen. The other thing I like about the side roads is the way that they've not been too trigger happy with putting traffic lights on them. On some schemes like Cycleway 6 up Farringdon Road, you'll often find yourself waiting at empty traffic lights because too many side roads have been fitted with signals. Here it's been recognised that there's actually very limited traffic coming out of the side roads, and so a give-way line is enough. The result is that you're not constantly stopping for imaginary traffic, and progress cycling down this street is therefore extremely fast. It's a really convenient route and a lot faster than Quietway 1 or Cycleway 10 as it's now called. Of course, there are still signals for the pedestrian crossings as people need a safe place to cross the road. Don't be confused by the design of this junction here, by the way. Those red lights are for people on the main carriageway or who want to cross the road, not people turning left. In this direction, we use the cycle track, which has a dangerously placed sign marking the skid hazard and a motorist blocking the exit, parking on a double yellow line. In the opposite direction, you don't have to worry about any of that, and you just cycle on the carriageway, which is relatively quiet. Turn the first left here and head up Horseferry Place and find yourself on the Thames path. Sadly, there isn't a good cycle path along the entire Thames, but this bit is a bit of an exception, and there is actually quite a nice track here, although there is a contractor unfortunately parked on it on the day that I came to film. We're now coming up to Cutty Sark Gardens, which is named after the museum ship you can find there. And just a reminder that you are supposed to dismount here past this sign, so I do just that. On the left, that round building is actually the entrance to the Thames Tunnel, which will take you to Island Gardens on the Isle of Dogs just south of Canary Wharf. It's free to go through, although unfortunately you can't cycle. You can take your bike and wheel it, and I've done it several times. It's probably the best way to get across the river at this point. And that's basically it. We're in Greenwich, and what a beautiful view this is, just to show off how good the new camera is. I think it makes a really big difference. Thanks very much for watching that, guys. Really appreciate it, and I really hope you find the video useful and enjoyable. Don't forget to hit the like button and to subscribe if you are not already subscribed. If you really like the channel, you can find a link in the description below to chuck us a couple of quid.